All right, last time, let me get up here. We looked at the biblical form of government. Can somebody tell me one of the things we saw there? We saw four main thoughts about how the government should be organized and structured and that type of thing. You don't have to give me all four, but you can if you want. Christina looks excited about this one. Oh, she's looking up. That's just a change. So, any idea? No. You were here last class period, weren't you? Yeah. Okay. You still have no idea? It's bad. One of us failed. Yes. Written? Jacob?
Three separate entities of the government.
Okay, three separate branches. Megan?
Representative system.
Representative and federated. Okay, I thought you said variated. I'm not sure what that is, but federated I know. All right, so we saw those. We looked at some patches. We can see those ideas at least alluded to and excuse me, mentioned. And then we just started talking about this idea of federalism, or just explaining what the idea is in a broader general government context. And we looked at how the Constitution sets up a federated system for us. What is the phrase or the word used to describe the powers that are given to the national level? Somebody who didn't answer yet, we'll make you share. Or should I just randomly pick? That's more fun. It should be written right there, hopefully, in different color pixels. How does the Constitution, or what word do we use to describe how the Constitution splits up the power for the national level, the top level? Delegated or enumerated, right? A listing, it's a finite list of things. What's the word we used for what's left over, what's given to the states? More than leftover, something a little more sophisticated.
Those are reserved powers.
Reserved powers, anything not left, anything not specifically given to the national level is left for the states. So reserved powers. There's nowhere in there is there try an attempt to list all of the things that the states have the authority to do. It's just anything that's not on that list, which is a very broad thing. All right, and then originally, by our Constitution, the national level is supreme in the areas that they're given control over, and the states are supreme in the areas that they're given control over. We use the phrase or the term there, dual federalism, where both are supreme in their particular realms. And we mentioned that we've left that dual federalism position and gotten to a place called cooperative federalism. And that's where the lower level is really forced to buckle under to what this national level wants. Even in areas where this national level is not given any authority, the states are forced to buckle under, forced to cooperate. And you can look and still see states and state agencies and schools run by states and all kinds of things at the state level, but they're forced to comply with all kinds of wishes and demands from the top level. As I was leaving class last time, Jacob stole the whole point of the rest of this. He said, it's all about the money. All right? And that really is the short, we'll give you some details, but that's the short story of this thing. The top level uses money to browbeat the people underneath into submission. Think of all the things that your boss gets you to do for money. All right. Where do you work? Okay, so you don't. She's completely independent. Ted Cruz right there. You're not going to listen to the national government.
Yeah.
Where do you work?
Round the clock.
Round the clock. Waitress?
Yeah.
What shift do you work? She come and torture you sometime. Oh, that's too late to eat dinner. So.
Like 4:30 to.
Okay, 4:30 to 5. That's not too bad. So, but you probably do a whole lot of things there that you don't wake up in the morning thinking, man, I can't wait. Okay, I can tell which way you're going. No, I love it. I would come even if they didn't pay me. So you go there to get paid, and your boss tells you to do things that you wouldn't typically do because you want the money. And not saying that's necessarily evil, but that's, I'm not trying to say that you're not evil either, as you might be, but but it's not evil. That profit motive, it's built into us. That same idea on a grander scale, really, is what has happened. The national level has been able to get its hands on a gigantic pile of money, and it dangles that money in front of the states. It says, unless you're willing to do these things that we want, you don't get any of it. Right? Even, I don't know if you guys followed the case. Oh, where was the city? It's about an hour away on the far side of Chicago. There's a school district there where it was an upper high school level teen boy demanded that he was a girl. Anybody remember that case? And he dressed like a girl. It was really ugly. I mean, if any of you guys are thinking about it, you turn out looking just like an ugly girl. Okay, so don't do it for no other reason. Anyway, he dressed like a girl. The school district had agreed to have all of the teachers and coaches address him as a female, call him she, use his female name. They had partitioned off a section in the girls' locker room that he could go and change in. I mean, but that wasn't enough. So he sues and goes to the school board and to the federal Department of Education. And they came back and said, you have to give him free access to the locker room. It makes him feel uncomfortable to have this special compartment that he has to change in. Hopefully some of you are thinking, this is a little bit insane. Okay? And that's the answer. That it's completely insane. But you think, why would that school district even think about trying to comply with this? It's because the National Department of Education, I think it was $5 million worth of funding. They were saying, you're not going to get this funding unless you comply with this. Right? And the school district should say, keep your money. Right? That should be the answer. We're not letting boys in the girls' locker room. But that is dangled over people all over the country. I mean, we joked the other day about Congress giving school lunch regulations about how they eat lunch here in Chesterton. It's the money. I mean, Congress saying, if you want money from us to help fund your school lunch program, here are the strings. Right? And so Jacob took all the fun out of it by saying it's all about the money, but that really is the bottom of it. It's the money. So let me give you some details, because that's not a very good test question. It's too short. The money. And we got to get some details there. Let me go through a little bit, just a very brief bumping through the last 100 years of history or so, pointing out some major places where we begin to see this development where the national level is able to buy off and coerce the lower levels with that money. All right, the first two things to mention come out of the Progressive Era, 1901 to, who's in American history or was and should know that date? 20, is what you said? Very close. 21. So, 1901, 1920, Progressive Era, we see a couple of changes here that do great damage to the country in general, as well as in this particular area. Does anybody remember some Progressive Era changes? That's later. That's actually the second main point here. That's later. That's 1933.
It had to do with the tax. It was like they taxed differently depending on how much money you make.
Okay, the income tax. Income tax. That was 1913. Prior to this, there's a requirement that taxes be apportioned among the states based on their population. So Congress would say, we need $100 million, and so Indiana's got to pay this cut of it, this much, and Indiana would collect that money and give it to them. Or Congress would set up a tariff and collect money on goods brought into the country. It intentionally put significant restrictions on how much money they could collect, making it awkward to just collect massive piles of money.
They had the amendment for elected senator.
Okay. That's the second one. But you're good. That's right. But let me finish this one. Prior to this, the money was collected by the states and sent to Congress, primarily. Now, with the direct election of you've ruined my life, Jacob. With the income tax being made constitutional through an amendment, Congress bypassed the state government and took the money directly from the people. So it goes from me straight to the national level, and from your parents straight to the national level, and from from you, at least temporarily, straight to the national level, and then you file your income taxes and you get it all back. But they bypassed the state government. Before, the money was collected by them and passed on. Okay, so now Congress is able to take money much more directly out of the pockets of all the people in the country. They amass it in D.C., and then they go back to the state governments and say, if you want any of this, you've got to do these things. So before this point, Congress really didn't have their ability to get their hands on the money without the states being involved. They didn't have a mechanism to collect all the money from us individually. Now with this, they have direct access to all that money, and it's this money that they use to buy them off. Okay, so the income tax, that is a significant step. There's lots of things that are incredibly stupid about the income tax. That is on the list. Okay, it gave Congress access to this massive pile of money. It's also just an incredibly dumb way to collect taxes. Imagine if, I'm sure you're all Blackhawk fans. They won 12 games in a row and then lost last night to, forget who, Tampa Bay or something. Imagine if in the NHL, if you won, as you won more and more games, the rules for you got more strict than the teams that lost lots of games. And you could see whoever the commissioner is of the NHL or whatever they call him, talking about, well, it's not fair for these poorer teams, and you have these rich teams that hog all of the excess wins to themselves. We want to distribute them more evenly. No, we look at the guy and say, are you insane? This is a sporting event. The rules should be the same for everybody. In the financial realm, we make it harder for the people who are the most successful. We are punishing them, right? And it makes just as little sense there. So anyway, the income tax, another essay I thought would be fun for a test sometime was, defend or support the idea that the income tax is the most idiotic way to collect taxes. And you can go on either side of that and argue your position. You can make a really strong case that it's about as stupid as it can get. All right, so income tax, 1913. The next one was already mentioned, it was also 1913, direct election of senators. How were senators elected prior to this? Most of you are in American history and also U.S. Constitution first semester. So you hit this twice at least. So if you're sitting there thinking, I have no idea, I guess it tells us something.
Didn't the people select the senators before and then they changed it to where or no wait, they switched it. The
Yes.
government did it and now the people.
Yes, the state governments picked it before. The state legislatures particularly picked the senators for the state, and now it was the people of the state doing it directly. Once again, it bypasses that state government. The senators are elected directly by the people. The state government has no way to stop this. Prior to this, the state legislature picked the senators. They answer to the legislature. So when Congress is passing some crazy idea about Common Core or some national health care, the states are able to say no in the Senate. No, we don't want this, because the Senate represented the state governments. We completely wiped that out. Now the state governments have no representation in Congress other than, they get to also vote. No representation in Congress. And the money is taken directly from the people and sent to Congress, and they're cut out of it. So we're setting the stage here for this cooperative system to come about. Maybe we should go back to the root of the problem. That'd be fun. See Ted Cruz argue about going back to state legislatures, picking senators, and getting rid of the income tax. Wouldn't it be fun to watch MSNBC and CNN? They'd be pulling their hair out. What's this Neanderthal wanting to do? Oh, that'd be fun. All right. And actually, it's not the root of the problem. You have to go a little bit further back into history, and it's a eroding of our Christian foundation. But all right, progressive era. That's we can at least on this level see the stage being set there for Congress to have access to this money that it uses to pummel the states into submission with. If you have a lot of money and you want to pummel me into submission with it, just throw wads of it at me until I give up. I'm ready to suffer. All right, the next wave of change. We could do incremental changes there, but I just wanted to kind of highlight some of the major spots. The next one is what Davey mentioned, 1933, the New Deal, FDR. All right, here we're going to see, for the first time majorly in American history at least, something happened. And the next couple of points really are more of the same, but I'll mention these because there's kind of some fresh waves of this. What happens here is, under the guise of saving us from the Great Depression and pulling us out of it and all that kind of good stuff, Congress came up with a whole bunch of programs that the states got to run, and Congress would pay for it. On the surface, this is a great deal. So, Congress says, all right, you've got a lot of unemployment in your state, so we're going to give you, these $100 million, and you can hire, 1,000 18 to 25-year-olds and build parks or whatever. Here's this money. You get to administer it. The states look at this and say, this is great. We don't have to pay for it. We have this money. We have programs. I can go back to the people in my home district and say, look what I did. But the money coming from the top brought the strings, all right? And it always does. There's in Indiana a voucher system for private education. And at this point, there's very little of a string, but it's there. And I don't trust the government, right? The string is going to get thicker, and there's going to be more of them, all right? That little bit is there. So initially here it wasn't egregious, but it sets this precedent where the states run these programs and the national level pays for them. All right, and the person that pays gets to call the shots, and that's what happens here ultimately. So this wave of things through the New Deal, we see a whole bunch of those type of programs that the states administered and the national level paid for. They're starting to use this money that they're able to extract from the people. If you want to get deeper into it, we jettison the gold standard so Congress can just print more money if they ever need more to buy off the states. All right, the next wave. We have 1933, the New Deal. The next wave is in the 50s and 60s, the Civil Rights Movement. Here we see another wave of this type of legislation, this type of program aimed at civil rights, integration of schools and all kinds of things. But these are mostly programs run by the states and paid for by the national level. I mean, think of the beauty of... I don't know. Who could we use as the example? Mr. Snyder coming to you and said, I want to set up this new program, and I want to see what it's like for a college student to go through school without any financial problems. I'm going to pay for all of your school bill. I'm going to give you money to eat in a snack shop with periodically, and just no financial worries. Is anybody like that in here? Tamar is? I want to be friends with some of you guys. I'll meet you in the snack shop. I'll help you spend that voucher. But I want to do this experiment. So he's paying your school bill. He's giving you this, dropping this cash in your pocket. You walk by him in church. He slips it, hands it to you under the table or something. It would not be outrageous to him to start thinking, well, what are they doing? Are they studying? And him coming to you and saying, you know what, I'm willing to pay for your schooling, but I expect, B's at least, and I expect this amount of time in the library. And very quickly there's going to be these strings attached. If you want to continue to get my money, this is what I expect to happen. Okay, and the same thing we had that with the New Deal. And now we have another wave of that type of stuff with the civil rights legislation. Congress, we're going to do all this stuff to help all this civil rights tension. It starts giving the states money to do it, and then starts saying, well, we got to do this and you got to do that, and you have to hire handicapped people, and you have to hire left-handed blondes, which. That's the same thing, isn't it? Sorry. You're safe, Megan. Are you left-handed? So you'll be fine. You're not handicapped. Just mostly handicapped. Are you left-handed? You're not really blonde. So, all right. But anyway, they start making all these restrictions and rules. The government's great at making stupid rules. My dad used to work for the national level. It's a little bit different situation. Worked for the Mining, Safety, and Health Administration. There was a handicapped lady that worked in her office, made $50,000, $60,000 a year, and did nothing. I mean, she would make photocopies every now and then, but she was just didn't do anything. She was offered $20,000 to retire early and took it. I mean, making $50,000 or $60,000 a year. Hopefully, you're thinking. It doesn't sound. Just keep your job. Anyway, she offered, but anyway, she just wasted money like crazy. She bought a laptop and didn't like it, so she was giving it away. And I ended up with it. So it wasn't too bad. But if you ever want some stupid rules and regulations, the government can figure it out. And that's what they started doing with this money. You want this money, you've got to do these things. If you ever go to some state agency and you think, why did they do that and that and that? Often at the back of it is, that's what the government requires to get the money. All right? With the money comes the control. All right, so the civil rights legislation, we have another wave of that. The next wave comes with Johnson, and it'd be in the 60s still, the Great Society, the war on poverty that we're still waging. The poverty rate is essentially the same. 60s. Yeah. It's the same as it was at this point. So a failed war on poverty for sure. So we have another wave of programs, helping people get jobs, helping people retrain for things, et cetera, educational things, all aimed at stopping poverty. Same idea. Paid for by the national level, administered by the states, and with rules to follow. All right. I should probably add here, we're getting more and more of this. I mean, with the Obama administration, the Affordable Care Act, which is another horribly named law, sets up, it hasn't stopped really, at least, but historically those are some of the main peaks where we see this type of things. Let me give you a couple of stats just if you want them. All right. These numbers are the amount of money spent in programs like we're talking about, money that the federal government gives to the states to administer these programs. At the start of the New Deal, nothing. By 1960, we're up to $7 billion. By 1977, after we kill poverty off, we're up to $22 billion. And by the time Reagan comes into office in 80, we're at $84 billion spent in these types of programs. So this is a massive escalation. And it's not stopped, and it's continued to escalate. Okay, so that is how we got to this position where we have a cooperative federalist state as opposed to the dual federalist state. The lower levels are forced to comply with whatever the top levels want to do. All right, questions on that much? I have all that underneath what caused America's system to become cooperative instead of dual. There's two more things I want to talk about here with federalism. The next one is the three main ways the government gives this money to the states. There's a couple different avenues that they use to give it to the states. One of them has not been used for a very long time, but at least it's there. And then some problems. I think we've pointed out some as we went along here, but a list of problems that we get out of this type of cooperative federal state where the states are bought and forced into this lower position. All right, first of all, the three main ways three main types of programs are used to give this money to the states. The first is a categorical grant. All right, these are the really bad ones. These are the ones with all the strings attached. If you want the federal government to give you money for your sports program, then you have to have an equal number of men's and women's sports. And if you have a guys' basketball team, you've got to have a girls' basketball team. Or you have to let the girls on the guys' team. I mean, I don't know. Have you ever heard people argue, well, if the girl's good enough to get on the guys' team, they should let her play? What about the guys who are good enough to get on the girls' team? Should we let them play? Anyway, it never goes the other direction. It's so unfair. Hopefully you guys have enough pride that you think, I'd rather not play. If I couldn't make the guys' team, I don't want to play with the girls. But anyway, there's all kinds of rules. I'm kind of joking about the equal number of sporting teams and things like that, but there really are regulations and restrictions. You have to provide both or allow the girls to play on the guys' team. There's all kinds of things like that. If you want the federal money, then these are the things you have to follow. And those, very broadly, are called categorical grants, where the government's giving money for some particular thing. Underneath this categorical grant, there's kind of two types of these categorical grants. The first one is a formula grant. Formula grant. This is where the amount of money is determined by some kind of formula. For public education, it's based upon average student attendance. All right, if the district in Chesterton has an average attendance of 9,000 students, they get their school money based on that average attendance. They might have 9,500 students, but if the average attendance is 9,000, then they get paid based on it. So there's some sort of formula like that. I think it's especially fun to listen to Chicago at the start of the school year. They run this big ad campaign about come to school the first day, you don't want to miss. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, there's $16,000 ahead on the line. You don't want to miss. They're pushing this idea of come to school. But I don't think that's the only motivation, but it is part of it. If they can bump up that average attendance a little bit, then there's a significant amount of money. The Chesterton, somewhere around $17,000 or maybe $18,000 a kid right now. Some of that comes from the state. That's an incredible amount of money.
Does this mainly affect more of the public schools or in same with Christians?
No, this is just public schools.
Public schools?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We don't get $18,000 a kid from the government. We wouldn't have to burn that note. It'd be gone.
Well, what I mean about the Christian schools, because I know back where I'm at, there is a Christian school that's more like it's not private anymore. It's like a public Christian school.
Okay.
That's what I was kind of.
Oh no, there are some. Maybe I didn't answer the question very well. We don't take anything, but in Indiana you can. Like there's a voucher system, and there's some tax credits you can get. As long as there's a set of rules you got to comply with. If you do that, then you can start. The money would go to the parents, and they would pay their school bill with it, and that type of thing. But that's state by state. So that school must be willing to give in to all the regulations for the money.
Okay.
So. All right, so formula grants. There's some sort of formula based upon how many people are participating, that type of thing. They get it. The other one is a project grant. This is just the government, giving away some minuscule amount of money, maybe $300 million. This is to, what's the phrase? Urban renewal in some blighted inner city. $300 million. It sounds really fancy, but project grants, those are called. If you ever heard the phrase or the term pork barrel spending, all right, a lot of those are technically these project grants, where somebody in Congress will petition to have money spent on a particular project back in their home district. It's just money. Here's the money for the project. The famous bridge to nowhere in Alaska was a project grant here. Pork barrel spending. So both of those, formula grants, project grants, they're these categorical grants, and they're the ones with all these strings attached. If you want this money, here's the loopholes you have to jump through. Okay, the next category is a little bit less egregious. These are called block grants. And here these are the government handing out money with fewer strings attached. It's not that there's no strings, but it's much more, here's $100 million for the city of Flint, Michigan, so they can have clean water again. Have you guys followed that? I haven't followed it all completely, but they tapped into a different water source, and the water was so corrosive it's pulling lead out of the pipes into the water that everybody's drinking, and now they're handing out bottled waters to everybody in the town. I mean, Flint is so crazily liberal, it's funny to watch. But block grants, it's just a chunk of money with very little strings attached. It's like, here, you need some money, here's some money, fix it. And they pass the money off, and then there's not a whole lot of checking up on it. A block grant. All right, the last one is revenue sharing. And this is completely free money, no strings attached. It really doesn't make any sense today to talk about revenue sharing, because that implies that there's some sort of revenue to share. But way back, Jefferson and Jackson, some of the early presidents, once they would pay all the bills, and at the end of the year they have extra money. So they did just pass it, send it back. All right, everybody, we collected more than we needed, so they gave it back to the states. Kind of a refreshing idea. Reagan did something similar in California. They were running a surplus, so I think he did it through a tax credit the next year, gave the money back to the people. It wasn't his money, and all his agents said, no, we can't do that. Let's spend it on something. He said, no, it's extra. Let's send it back. So anyway, that's the idea of revenue sharing. Really isn't a feasible option with our current state. All right, I have one other thing to mention here under these types of grants. It's just a little asterisk here that could fit other places, but I've got it here. And I've kind of already stated it, is that states do not have to accept this money. There's nothing that forces them to accept it, other than they need the money. Obamacare. Part of the, I was going to say one of the worst things, but it's hard to pick the worst. I mean, the whole thing is a disaster. But one of the things that was done, it set up these exchanges where you could go and buy insurance, these insurance marketplaces online. And it's the ones where if you paid attention to the news, it was the one, the programs kept crashing, and people get stuck there with the spinning ball forever and couldn't sign up for insurance. And they spent millions and hundreds of millions of dollars on this website that didn't work. But what the law did was it said, if states set up an exchange, then all of the people in their state that signed up for insurance through that website, basically, were then eligible to get all kinds of subsidies from the federal government. If the state didn't set up the exchange, then all the people in the state weren't eligible for these subsidies. You see the barrel they were trying to put the states over? There were a significant number of states said, we're not doing it, we don't care. And that's when the national government came in and started setting up their own exchanges in these states, and continued then to give out people who signed up for insurance through those exchanges subsidies. And that's actually a lawsuit that's being processed right now, that the law explicitly states the subsidies have to go through the state exchanges. So, but anyway, it was done intentionally. It was to put pressure on these states to join into the system. And when, I forget the number, it was a half or something of the states didn't, then all of a sudden they were in a pickle. What do we do? And they started to set their own up. But anyway, states don't have to. And the answer should be no. They don't want your money. Keep it. With all the crazy strings. I do have a little bit of sympathy here for the state governments and the people of a state, because it's their money that was taken. Right? If I reached into your wallet and took out $100 and came back to you and said, all right, I'll give you this $100 if you do these three things. You think, well, that's my money. I want my money back. All right, and you've got to be willing to say, no, I don't want my own money back. Right, because I don't want the string. So I can sympathize with governors and others that feel this pressure that it's the money of the people in my state that was taken. I kind of have this obligation to try to get it back. But the answer should be no. We don't care about your money. We're not letting guys in the girls' locker room. I mean, you can do whatever you want. We don't want it. That should be the answer. So anyway, they're in a pickle a little bit, but they don't have to accept it. There's nothing there. That would be fun if every state just said, no, we don't want your money. And the Department of Education is sitting there with all of this money. What do we do? Nobody will take it. It would turn the system upside down a little bit. So. Or just get Ted Cruz in for president. Oh well. All right, last thing we have under federalism. Problems that this thing sets up. Hopefully you might be able to list a few and think of some. But I split it into 4 different things. Much better for a test. I'm saying that partly in jest. It's also good to kind of pull all these thoughts together for us. All right, first thing I have here is that the line between the national and state governments gets blurred, or maybe erased would be a better word. It's so difficult to figure out, is this a state issue or is this a federal issue? Is this a state issue that's funded by the federal government with rules dictated by the federal government, but it's a state program? It's that whole line. We talked about that federated system where there's different levels. It's just smushed and twisted all together, and it's very difficult to pick the two apart. All right, the second problem we've hit several times is all of the strings attached. Right, if you want to get a car loan or a house loan or something, they're going to, we can pick on Jacob. He wants to buy the $3,000 car at the used car lot, and he goes into the bank and says, I want $10,000. And the bank's going to say, no, you don't have enough credit, the car's only worth $3,000, we're not going to give it to you. They're going to put some restrictions on the amount of money that they can give you. Right? If you want to get in a position where you don't have to live by those strings, you pay cash, okay? You can buy whatever car you want. You don't have to worry about the restrictions that the bank puts on you. So here we have these strings, these regulations and rules that are smothering us. Maybe you think one of those rubber band balls, and we're kind of in the middle of it. That's our position. All right, third thing is the size of these programs is difficult to shrink. Like Reagan's famous words. He has a lot of those. The closest thing to eternal life on earth is the government agency. And they just they don't go away. So, this is a natural thing in any bureaucracy. All right, in a large bureaucracy, even in a large company, if I'm in charge of a certain department, we get budgeted a certain amount of money every year. If I don't spend all of that, then the next year the natural thing is for my budget to get cut, because the company's looking at it, so you didn't need it all. So there's this pressure for the guy running this particular, for me, to figure out what to do with all this money. I've got to spend it all, and you got to make it look good. But you got to spend it all. So the next year you can go back and say we need an increase. We maxed it out. Right? The same type of things happens here, except there's not any profit motive on top for the business owners to really put pressure on you to be tight. It's not their money. We'll give you a little bit here, a little bit there. We have laid onto that the idea of the different states. Let's not pick on Jacob. Let's say Jacob is the principal governor who says, keep your money. Is that a scary thought, Megan? Mm-hmm. That he's the governor or that he's principal? Both of those are kind of either. Right. He tells the federal government, I don't want your money. Okay, let me back up. Let's say the federal government says, we're going to give away this $1 trillion for education, and we'll split it up amongst all the states. And Jacob says, no, I don't want it. Well, that means all the states who take it get bigger slices of the pie. So, wait, I don't want her to get a bigger piece of the pie. I'll take mine to keep it out of her hands. I mean, they really do a bad job with education there. So I've laid onto it another extra layers of this thing that cements this thing in. Nobody wants to get cut out. It is kind of nice in theory to say, everybody should just say no. But, the one guy who says he'll say no but then takes the money. Ooh. There's some pressure there. So it's just about impossible to get rid of these things. And that really is one of the problems with Obamacare. It is getting cemented in now. There are people that are starting to get these subsidies, and they expect to get them every year. And now when we talk about getting rid of Obamacare, the liberals can talk about, you're going to take away this person's health care. They wouldn't have it except for this subsidy, and it makes it very difficult to get rid of. So anyway, difficult to get rid of. There's other factors, but this is also part of it. All right. The fourth thing I kind of already hinted at, it puts the states in competition for this money from the national government, like a bunch of pigs trying to get at the trough. Jacob says, my constituents, the people in my state coughed up a lot of money through their taxes. I want to get that share back. So they're all there at the pig trough wanting to get their cut. What's that?
That's a good way to look at it.
You being the pig, or
No.
oh, it fits with the pork barrel spending and all of that. So, anyway, you might not have paid attention in 2008. How old were you guys? 9? Young? How old were you in 2008?
18.
12?
Or
8?
12, no, 18.
Wow. 12. So 6th, 7th grade? 13. Oh, well. I was old enough to know what was happening in the world, unfortunately. When Barack Obama won the presidency, his seat was vacated in the Senate. It was really fun to watch Illinois. Several politicians go to jail as they talked about selling this Senate seat, and the governor talked about how it was, he had some other words thrown in there about how it was golden. And this is the valuable thing. I'm not just going to give it away for nothing. And, he goes to jail. People who tried to buy it go to jail. But one of the reasons it was actually stated by several people that we've got to fill this seat because Bush's stimulus package was getting divvied up. And they wanted to have their both senators in Congress to make sure they got their cut. That was actually one of the arguments that people brought forth. We've got to have him filled. We can't just, ride out the rest of his term with only one senator. We've got to fill it right now so we get our cut of this thing. That was fun. Oh, well. That wasn't fun. It was fun watching the whole swirl of them trying to sell this thing. And Blagojevich, wasn't it first thing in the morning he was going out running or something, and they arrested him as he was going out for his morning jog or something. A lot of fun things. So, okay, so problems with this whole system. Questions on that?